Have you ever made a mistake that was so painful, so gut-wrenching, you just swore to yourself, never again? Well, for investor Ray Dalio, that exact kind of failure wasn't just an end. It was the beginning. It became the very foundation for a whole new way of looking at life and work, a system for turning his biggest pains into his most powerful principles. So let's get into it. This is the big question, right? It's the one that Dalio really had to figure out. And it doesn't matter if you're investing billions of dollars or just trying to figure out your next career move. That fear of being wrong, it can totally paralyze you. But what if there was a system, a process you could use to really maximize your chances of getting it right? In this quote, this is really where it all began for him. Early in his career, he basically bet the farm on a trade. And he was dead wrong. It was a visceral, almost physical experience of loss. He said it felt like getting an electric shock every single day. This wasn't some lesson in a textbook. It was real, firsthand pain that forced him to completely rethink how he made decisions. So out of that incredibly painful experience, he came up with this simple but profound equation. He realized that pain is just a signal. That's all it is. It's a little alert telling you that you're bumping up against reality. But if you can just push through that pain, if you can reflect on it and figure out what really caused it, you get something amazing, a principle. This little formula becomes the engine for your own evolution. It turns those tough moments into this incredible upward spiral of learning. Okay, so before you can even think about using a process, you've got to have the right mindset. And for Dalio, that starts with one thing, a radical commitment to seeing the world exactly as it is, not how you wish it was. Dalio calls this radical truth, and it's the absolute bedrock of his whole philosophy. Think about it. If your starting point is a fantasy, your outcome is going to be a fantasy too. The key here is that you have to care more about what's true than you care about being right. You got to accept that the good stuff will usually take care of itself. Your real job is to hunt down and face the bad stuff. And this slide just perfectly highlights the two ways of operating. Most people, most of us, we live on the left side of this screen. We're worried about how we look, and we're totally seduced by those first-order consequences, like the immediate yumminess of eating a slice of cake. Dalio's way is to ignore all that and focus only on the goal. You have to consider the whole chain reaction. The pain of exercise, which is a first-order negative, is totally worth it for the second-order positive of being healthy. And this really gets to the core of the challenge, doesn't it? Our own egos, our own blind spots, they put up this massive force field to protect us from uncomfortable truths. But Dalio argues that breaking through that, and even learning to love finding out where you're weak, is the single most important thing you can do to get what you want out of life. All right, so you've embraced reality. What now? How do you actually move forward? Well, Dalio created this simple, repeatable loop for turning your biggest goals into your actual reality. So this 5-step process isn't just some abstract idea. No, it's the actual machine that Dalio built for himself to get through that painful but totally necessary journey of facing problems head-on and evolving right past them. Okay, here it is. It looks pretty simple, I know, but the real magic is in doing all 5 of these steps and doing them in order. So, number 1, you gotta have clear goals. Know what you're aiming for. 2, identify the problems that are standing in your way. 3, and this one is so important, diagnose those problems to get at the real root cause, not just the surface level symptom. 4, design a plan to get around it. And finally, number 5, you gotta have the discipline to push through and actually do it. And what's so critical to understand here is that this is not a one-and-done checklist. It's an evolutionary loop. Every single time you go through this cycle, you not only achieve a goal, but you personally become more capable. The problems you face will get harder, sure, but your ability to handle them grows even faster. It creates this constant upward spiral toward success. Now, Dalio didn't just keep these ideas to himself. He actually built his entire company, Bridgewater Associates, on this philosophy. And the result is something he calls an idea meritocracy. Just think about that for a second. It's not a dictatorship where the boss is always right. And it's not a democracy where every single opinion is treated as equal. It's a system designed so that the best ideas win, period. But how do you figure out which ideas are the best? Well, that brings us to this concept he calls believability. So who should you actually listen to? Dalio has a very clear filter. Believable people have two things going for them. One, have they done this exact thing successfully at least 3 times before? And two, when you ask them about it, can they clearly explain the cause and effect logic behind their success? If the answer is yes to both, their opinion gets more weight. So what does this look like in practice? Well, imagine you're in a disagreement. You don't just average everyone's opinions. No, you weigh them by how believable each person is. The opinion of a real expert who has actually been there and done that should count for way more than the opinion of someone who's just taking a guess. It's a system for getting to the best possible answer, every time. And look, the stakes here are just incredibly high. For Dalio, the failure to have these kinds of open, honest, thoughtful disagreements, it isn't just a problem for businesses. He sees it as a massive human tragedy that leads to terrible decisions everywhere, from politics to medicine to our own personal lives. So, we've gone through Dalio's mindset, his process, and how he organizes his teams. Now, let's bring it all back to you.
This is the big question, isn't it? It's one thing to hear about all these cool ideas, but it's something else entirely to actually apply them to your own life.
Because ultimately, Dalio's goal isn't for you to just copy and paste his principles. His most important principle of all is that you have to think for yourself. You can use his framework as a guide, but you have to figure out what you want, what is true for you, and then design your own path to get there.
And Dalio's final point is a really powerful one. He doesn't think he's some kind of special genius. He believes the system he built is the real reason for his success. And that leaves us with one final question. The issue isn't whether Dalio's principles work for him. The real question is, what principles are you going to build from your own pain, and what are you going to achieve with them?